Good morning, and just before I start, I've gone a little bit off script, Heather, so I don't know if I'm going to be talking about all those things. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands we're meeting on, the Wurundjeri people, and pay my deepest respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also how amazingly they looked after this land for 60,000 years and continue to do so in much more difficult circumstances. So I would also like to acknowledge any First Nations people in the audience today. So look, I'm going to start off with some reflections. Firstly, how we define family. I think that was one of the things I was supposed to do. Basically, we need to, obviously, all you know here that family is not just about biology. And where I come from in New Zealand, we have a very handy word in the Māori language called whānau. And whānau means anyone, any group of people who are kind of intimately connected to each other. And that's been a very useful concept to get over this idea that, you know, we're just talking about the nuclear family. We're actually talking about groups of people who are connected to each other in their personal sort of lives. And that could mean your friends, it could mean the people next door who look out for you. It can mean your extended family and anyone that you define as your key people. So and I'm just going to, going on from that, I think one of a very famous sociologist said that people from a European cultural tradition are weird. Now, weird stands for Western educated, industrialised, rich and democratic. And the weird people really mostly originate from Northern Europe, which was the place where Protestantism and capitalism sort of burgeoned, I guess. And that's where individualism became very much a part of our cultural heritage. And in another sense, we're weird too, because we're very, very unusual. Those of us from that heritage are very unusual in that most cultures in the world are very collective. They're not individualistic. And of course, our service system follows that model, so that when someone goes into a service, they're just seen as an individual. So the service doesn't really think about the whole family or the people around that person. And that is a huge deficit in the way that we respond to people. And I'm really very keen to see some of these much more relationally focused approaches coming into our services, like open dialogue, because that is an approach that automatically includes the family and the people around that person in a dialogue with the people who are providing the service. And we must embed these approaches in our system if we've got any hope of a system that truly helps people, because if we don't bring the family in, our outcomes are going to be worse. And I just think this is a truly short-sighted approach that our very individualistic services use. Now, look, I've been around for a while in these movements, or whatever we want to call ourselves, and I remember in the early days when they had organisations called the Schizophrenia Fellowship, and there was a lot of tension between the consumers and the carers back then, because we were out there saying we don't like the medical model, we don't like compulsory treatment, and we want our own liberty and freedom and so on, and we still say those things. But the families were very supportive of medication, diagnosis, and they really liked compulsory treatment. Now you can understand why, because people are scared and they're very worried. But and the other thing is, I used to talk to families about recovery back in the day, and they'd say, well, recovery's a hoax. That'll never happen for my relative. And so it was very difficult. And what I've noticed over the years, though, is that our agendas have become much more aligned. And that has been a fantastic thing. And I tell you, since I've been working in Victoria, one of the great pleasures I've experienced, and I can't say there've been a few of them, there've been some pains as well, but there's been quite a few pleasures. And one of them has been working with the families and the carers. I've really enjoyed that. And I do think that we now have a common sort of, more of a social justice framework that we can all work from. Now, the perspectives are different. So I come mainly from a consumer perspective. Oh, and I remember when I was a young woman, and I remember huge tension with my parents, who I normally got on with quite well before and after that period of my life. Huge tension. And of course, no one in the services helped us resolve those tensions. And of course, when I became a parent myself, I could suddenly understand why my parents were behaving the way they were. But I think one thing we need to do, both at that at that sort of family level, but also when we're working in the system or working in independent advocacy, is that we really have to make this a partnership approach and understand each other's perspectives. Because, when I was going through my mental distress, I came across as really selfish and difficult and just very self-absorbed. And that's because I was in profound pain. And anyone in profound pain is going to be self-absorbed. But to the person looking on, they just think, you fucking just, And that's understandable, but we need to kind of have a meeting point where we can sort of get inside each other's worlds, because they are very different, especially at those points where there's a crisis. And so that's incredibly important, that we respect each other. And you see parts of the world, I'm thinking about what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, and there's a long history of bungled colonial project, and then a long history of people who couldn't get there, two peoples who couldn't get there to understand each other and to respect each other and look at the outcome. It's terrible. So now I'll go on to the more scripted bit, which is the Royal Commission. And of course, the Royal Commission had a lot to say about families and carers, which was great. And of course, their second principle was that we're going to create a system in which families, carers and supporters have their contributions recognised and supported. Now, how many of us have seen principles that just sit there and, don't come alive? But, we live in hope. And I think that there is enough substance in the recommendations to bring that alive. And of course, recommendation 30 was about system-wide involvement of families and carers. Now, the lived experience branch in the Department of Health, which is a fantastic group of people. That's been one of the other joys of coming to Victoria, has been working in the lived experience branch. And we are, with our partners, Tandem, Shark and Vimiac, are undergoing a lived experience leadership strategy, which includes kind of workforce as well. And so this leadership strategy will give effect to recommendation 30 about the system-wide involvement, and also the recommendation 28, I think, that relates to consumers. They're kind of parallel recommendations. Now, recommendation 31, the family carer-led centres, which are now called Connect. That's been a fantastic project, and we've really enjoyed working with Tandem on getting those up and running. And it's just great to see that they're open, and they'll soon have a logo, and we're hoping. Good things take time, yes. Okay, so, and then there's recommendation 32, which is about young people whose family members experience distress, sometimes called young carers. And of course, there was funding allocated to the Satellite Foundation, and there are some other actions coming out of that recommendation. I think there's going to be a showcase this afternoon of some of those actions. So look, the other recommendations, we have a carer commissioner here today, Jackie. So I think you'll be hearing from Jackie at some point. Yeah. Oh well, yeah. Anyway, I'm sure she'll. Yeah. So and that's a great initiative to have a dedicated carer commissioner. We've got there was room for carer members on the interim regional boards and on the board of the Victorian Collaborative Centre for Mental Health and Wellbeing. Stronger recognition of families in the mental health and the new Mental Health Act, and also there's an active stream of family carer workforce development, and thanks to Clue for helping to keep that all moving and alive. And what I'd really love to see, if we project forward 10 years' time, I'd really love to see every family member that goes, who's got a relative or a friend or just someone they know that they're looking after, that goes into a mental health service, is offered family peer support. If we could just get that, as well as all the other things that are going on, I think that would be a great achievement. As well as getting those much more relational approaches into the system, and really, really kind of utilising the family carer-led centres, and having those family roles at the leadership positions, in services, in the service system, but also at the centre, where, with this commission and other areas. Now I'm just going to leave it at that, and and Fiona is going to come up. Fiona is our carer director in the lived experience branch, and she'll fill in any gaps that I haven't filled in. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mary. I was just thinking of the passion, skills and lived experience lens that you've brought to the department, and it was just amazing when we heard that there was going to be an executive director of lived experience. So yay for you. So Fiona, you've mucked up all my lines, Mary, here, but I'm going to introduce Fiona Patterson, who is going to introduce what her role is and then speak to you about whatever she's going to speak to you about. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Heather. I'm Fiona Patterson and I'm the Director Carer in the Lived Experience branch. I had great intentions of printing out a few pages this morning, but a very cheeky 5-year-old in our house made off with my printer cable last night and wouldn't give it up this morning, so apologies for having the screen in front of me. Thank you, Mary, for introducing some of our work. This morning I'm going to be reflecting on the importance of relational approaches and a range of work that's underway to really position families, carers and supporters alongside consumers at the heart of the reforming mental health and AOD service systems. including through the Mental Health and Wellbeing Workforce Capability Framework that Tim mentioned, the Carer Experience of Service Survey, the newly announced Mental Health and Wellbeing Connect Centres, and the expansion of the Family Carer Lived Experience workforce. So for me, today's event is clearly about showcasing really great practice in relational ways of working, which we know are essential to ensuring that families, carers and supporters are meaningfully involved and supported in our caring roles. Working effectively with families, carers and supporters is one critical capability for the workforce that's highlighted in the Mental Health and Wellbeing Workforce Capability Framework. And this framework, it calls for compassion, it calls for care, support and treatment to recognise that consumers live within the context of unique family and other often complex relationships, and that their collective and meaningful involvement will benefit everyone. There's a series of really powerful family and carer outcome statements in the framework. They require workforces to deliver treatment, care and support that recognises, understands and supports the impact of mental health challenges on the whole family system in a way that enhances families and supporters' strengths and protective factors and minimises harm to them. It requires workforces to give special consideration to vulnerable family members, like children, young people, ageing family members. Requires workforces to support families to understand and make choices about the ways in which they provide support and care, and to recognise and respond to our needs as family members, carers and supporters in ways that support our health and wellbeing. And I'm really looking forward to the sessions from organisations today who are leading the way. Next, I'd like to mention the annual Carer Experience of Service survey, known as the CES, designed to gauge the service experiences of families, carers and supporters within the mental health system and provide that information back to services and back to the department. And results from previous years have really echoed a lot of the findings from the Royal Commission, and what's really concerning is the consistently low ratings of the overall service experience of families, carers and supporters, hovering around the low 40% mark since 2021. And whilst there's no doubt that factors like COVID have had an impact, the results continue to emphasise the need for ongoing system reform. We're also aware of the challenges regarding the rollout of the CARES survey, including the heavy reliance on services to identify families and carers and keep contact details up to date. And so the Lived Experience branch is going to be reviewing both the CARES and the consumer equivalent, the YES survey, to improve accessibility and to strengthen data integrity as well. We're also there's work underway to adapt the CES and the YES surveys for use outside of area mental health services and start to capture the experience within new community services like the mental health and wellbeing locals, the Connect centres, within satellite support services for young people with caring responsibilities, and also within a new statewide peer callback service for families, carers and supporters caring for people experiencing suicidality. And so to the Mental Health and Wellbeing Connect centres, and it's taken me a while to stop saying family and carer-led centres. They've been that for quite some time. These fantastic new centres will fill a service gap that was really clearly identified by the Royal Commission, although already known to a lot of us on the ground for quite a few years. Our partnership with Tandem both created the base model of care for the centres, with all stages of consultation and analysis being led by family carer lived experience experts, as well as supported the important commissioning process. And it's fair to say there's high expectations for the centres to be non-clinical, with a majority of staff working from a family carer perspective, where community will be supported not only with their supporting and caregiving responsibilities, but also with their own mental wellbeing and substance use needs, within a service that holistically recognises the multiple identities that each of us hold and the interdependencies and the intricacies of our relationships. A relational approach to support is absolutely fundamental to this model. It's an approach we hope will filter back into other aspects of the wider mental health and AOD service system as well. In commissioning the Connect Centres, it was really important for us to achieve a strong provider partnership mix across the 8 sites, so that we would be able to leverage the strengths of all partner organisations to share knowledge, to share learning and practice and processes across the 8 centres and ensure a really strong service offering across diverse Victorian communities. Whether it's VACA's great work with First Nations communities, Satellites programs supporting young people with caring responsibilities, Shark's expertise in substance use and addiction, or Jesuit Social Services' long-standing work alongside multicultural communities, the collective impact will be huge. We're really delighted that Tandem are going to be leading the statewide support and coordination service for the centres, and this coordination service will support the emerging workforce as well as support the consistency of service provision across the state, ensuring that learning and practice and innovation and challenges are shared not only between the centres but also shared with the wider mental health and AOD sectors to help influence and inform family inclusive practices and processes across all services. In creating the Connect Centres, we've tried to go beyond co-design and co-production into a space of lived and living experience leadership, being led by empowering and privileging family carer perspectives and leaders. We're going to have a lived experience-led centres development group that will guide and shape the growth of the centres and also oversee the statewide support and coordination service. And membership on that group will represent the diversity of Victorians with family care lived experience, as well as Tandem and departmental representatives. And we'll be putting out an EOI for membership in the next few weeks, so please keep an eye out for that. We're really keen to get some wide interest in that. We're also going to commission a lived experience-led evaluation partner to help us demonstrate the effectiveness of the centres, both through the establishment process as well as through the services that they're ultimately going to be delivering. So just as a final point regarding the Connect Centres, we're already seeing the positive effects of the centres within providers and their partner organisations, and it's great to hear your feedback, Tim, from the Hume visit. I think one of the most important questions that we asked prospective providers during the interviews as part of the commissioning process was, how would having a family carer-led centre change the culture and practice within your own organisation? And the answers really told us who was truly committed to elevating family carer lived experience leadership and practice approaches beyond just the centres themselves. And we're all just super excited by the potential of these centres to create change for the wider mental health and AOD service systems, and hope that 8 centres is just the beginning. And so to the family carer lived experience workforce. The system reforms have already expanded our workforce in a diverse range of roles across the system, from peer support, consultancy, advisory positions, new trainers, new researcher roles, through to designated senior carer leadership positions. No, there you go. Absolutely fine. And many of you are here today and already playing such an important role in influencing service system planning, delivery and evaluation, and helping to improve service responsiveness to family carer needs, as well as connecting and supporting families, carers and supporters within our communities. I think the Department of Health really recognises the critically important contribution of lived and living experience workforce, as well as the many identified issues, shortages, need to support growth and opportunity and sustainability. And we're investing $10 million each year to ensure that lived and living experience workforces have career pathways and appropriate structures, training and practice supports, and working with Tandem, CLU and CMHL to provide family carer lived experience workforce development and supports. And I'd just really like to acknowledge the ongoing efforts and the commitment of the CLUE network and leadership to provide our growing carer lived experience workforce with a safe space to network, to discuss workforce matters, to advocate, co-reflect, provide opportunities for participation and leadership. Thank you. So the department's also providing additional funding to further expand and better support mental health lived experience workforces. These initiatives include supporting new lived experience positions in specialist mental health services, building skills and capability in supervision, leadership and project management, a new peer cadet program, opening up career pathways, supporting cadets studying Cert 4 in peer work, funding lived experience leaders to inform mental health workforce policy and reform programs, as well as developing an ongoing accountability and systems to collect and analyse and publish lived experience workforce data into the future. The supports for the workforce supports for family care lived experience workers have really expanded through the Lived and Living Experience Workforce Development Program and the CLUE Sustainability Investment, which many of you are involved with. And CLUE in tandem are leading program initiatives, including the Carer Perspective Supervision Training Pilot, where 13 people, I think, took part in the pilot last month. Evaluation of that training's underway, and further delivery will be scheduled next year. The Access to Supervision program, where 28 people accessed supervision last year, and the department's funded this program for another year to support the growing workforce. There's the Discipline Framework for Mental Health Family Carers being led by Tandem's research team, as well as a community of practice for carer consultants. And I believe the inaugural meeting of that is happening on the 8th of November, so please contact Annette McCurry or Kathy Collette if you'd like to be involved in that. So really building strong foundations. I just wanted to return to the importance of relational approaches. We know ourselves, but also more people know since the Rising Together report was written, that there's a really fundamental difference in how family carer workers practice compared to the rest of the system. That our existing systems are focused on treating individuals and not designed to consider the relational context that those individuals exist in. We know family carer lived experience workers are guided by recovery and relational recovery and approaches, and that we acknowledge recovery should be viewed as occurring within wider social processes and incorporate a whole of family approach to practice, where there's recognition of the multiple interacting relationships and identities that we hold. And I think that's particularly important to consider when we're trying to best support those from multicultural and faith communities, LGBTIQA+ and First Nations communities, where collectivist and family-centric worldviews and families of choice, as Rebecca spoke to, are such critical concepts. There's some really great examples of First Nations-led work being conducted through this lens. In particular, Widamba Willem, a service that provides intensive outreach support to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are experiencing mental ill health. And this is a partnership between Nimai National, VARS, the Victorian Aboriginal Health Service, Uniting Regen and Northern Area Mental Health Service. And they take a holistic approach through the lens of social and emotional wellbeing to provide support across many domains, including housing, physical health, substance use, employment and education. And family-centred practice is integral to this approach. And they describe it as the service working with multiple family members at once, which supports healing to multiple generations and strengthens connections to community and family. And I think events like today are such a great opportunity to raise awareness of the amazing work that's happening now across the sector. So just in closing, look, we know that relational and whole of family approaches are key to creating sustainable and lasting connections to support all within families and communities. Services are often involved in people's lives for short periods of time, but communities, families, carers, supporters and kin were involved long before, during and long after any service involvement, and we need the wider system to acknowledge that reality. And I think the mental health and wellbeing system will truly be at its best when practices, processes and supports are all approached through that lens. So once again, thanks for the opportunity to speak today, and to Tandem, Clue and the working group for organising and supporting the event. Thanks.